So we're gonna go ahead and just jump into that right now, because, hey, why not? And there we are. Here is BBG's game, against, I'm gonna say H4 Real. And it looks like we have a Draven, I assume, Ezreal list against an Aphelios list. Aphelios Twisted Fate, that is. Something that BBG has been practicing on the ladder quite a bit. So, not surprised to see that he brought that to the tournament. Well, like I said, a little bit late to the party, but I'm still pretty excited to watch BBG play. Yes. So, here we go.
Yeah, taking a look at this particular lineup here, again, we do see the Aphelios Twisted Fate. Now, I'm very surprised that this is a list that didn't get banned. One of the things that I was thinking about, and I was talking with some other players ahead of time, was that this is a very powerful, this is a very strong list, but my concern with it personally was that you take arguably the two best champions in the game and you put them together. And so when somebody is looking to ban a deck from your lineup, if they hit this, they take out some really strong cards. So I want to know what the rest of BBG's lineup is, because they clearly felt comfortable with pairing these two together.
Yeah, it is interesting to see that, as Twisted Fate and the Aphelios have been considered to be the two strongest champs in the game. It's been a very powerful deck, but a lot of people split it up into TF Fizz, for instance, and then they'll play Aphelios into something else instead. So it's interesting to see that he did decide to bring that. I think I can go ahead and play the volume on BBG stream, or I'll add some kind of background music. I don't know, maybe not.
So that attack there, kind of getting us caught up here with the game, right? That attack, very threatening for BBG, who now drops to 4 health. This is a list that has seemingly went very wide, trying to rush down BBG, and it seems to be working. He wants to develop that temple because you really like the engine that it provides. It gives you some sustainability, but the issue here is that you also need to get Aphelios going, because you need to gain health. You need that lifesteal. At the moment, you're at 4. You do not have a way to deal with this wide board. The only way you're going to prop yourself up is with a Severum this next turn, in all likelihood. Now, they took the Crescendum here because this is going to give them the Boxtopus. The attack is already done, so as you transition to the next turn, you'll hopefully get to use the Boxtopus to your advantage, but also Crescendum has the chance to go into Severum, so there's no reason to take it right away. This is the right play by BBG, no surprise there, but again, the goal here is, development-wise, you've got to get stuff on the board so that you can gain that health.
Yeah, this is a very scary board state for BBG, as you noted earlier. Not much to do, the Temple's stuck in hand a bit. The Crescendum is nice, but it's just not enough to deal well with these elusives, as well as Draven as well. Just not a fun spot to be stuck in. The Hush also a bit dead in this case too. Be interesting to see what he does, if there's a way for him to get out of this. At least he does have the attack token next turn. With the Pablo's a 3-4 challenger, might be able to bail him out a bit.
Yeah, so there was some hesitation there by BBG. Hard to know exactly what he's thinking without listening to the stream. It might have been some concern about ordering here, as far as with Aphelios, you want to be able to trigger your weapons so that you kind of don't waste a weapon, if that makes sense. But with the top deck of this second Boxtopus, that actually puts him in a really solid position here, because now you can get the Severum on this 3-4. It should be safe. One of the things you're normally worried about, because Severum is a slow spell, is that whatever you target, perhaps it gets destroyed and then you don't get to gain that health. But at 4 health here, that would require 2 cards from, I believe this is Hariel. I think that 4 is supposed to be an A, as somebody who has a number in their name, subbing out a letter. But here they would have to have something like Get Excited and a Mystic Shot to prevent it. That does not happen. So this is looking like a good turn for BBG as they try to stabilize.
Yeah, and the 5 health gain here, unless there's a Mystic Shot played onto the Spider, could be quite useful. I mean, Yeah, the Mystic Shot onto the Spider would be about the worst case scenario here, as no health gain would be pretty critical for BBG to lose that. I think, too, he was debating on waiting that Crescendum earlier because he knew that he wanted to develop this temple here, and the temple can be activated through the Crescendum as well.
If he locks in this attack, I'm going to find this to be very curious because this box of us, I was just about to say, can only get rid of these elusives through the Challenger. You could use Hush, I guess, to ambush one the next turn, but I would have been shocked if the second one didn't make the attack, but he tosses it in at the last second. And this helps. Now, this is still a scary board state. Hariel does have a wide board. 9 health is better than 4, but still very easy to burst down for a discard aggro like this. So this is Draven Jinx, and that means this is a very scary board, far more than it was before, because now Jinx is going to level up with this axe, and with no effective way to deal with her in hand, she's likely going to be making rockets going forward. So this is not a good spot to be in if you are BBG.
Yeah. Does have access to this Hush, so if she attacks, she might die, but even then, so much damage is going through, and if rockets could be created at burst speed through a discard or spells that are played. So even if you do kill her upon attack, the chance of her not making a rocket before that are very slim.
Yeah, you would need to essentially give a window of opportunity. So if Hariel does something besides take an open attack, or if they don't have that burst activator, then when priority gets passed over to BBG to take an action, a Snap Hush could shut down a rocket. And I think Hariel might be considering that and trying to play around it as they take their time, because, you know, this on ladder, when you're just mindlessly grinding away, this is probably a very easy decision, right? You just throw them all. Math is for blockers. But here, big stakes. Take your time to think it through. Wisely actually leaves that Jinx behind. Now, there could still be a Hush here if you put them on not having a burst option and leaving that Jinx back. Maybe you Hush just to try to prevent a rocket.
Yeah, and knowing too that this Gifts from Beyond does give access to lifesteal next turn, so they'll allow pushing, you know, healing a little bit more, just trying to get to safety as best as possible. So there are very few things that Jinx won't level up from in hand. I mean, I'm trying to think of anything. So I think the Hush is pretty much a must play here. And BBG still thinking, do I need to use it now? Like, because ideally you'd want to use Hush to be able to kill Jinx because she attacked and she loses her quick attack. But here, BBG recognizing that he's going down quite low, and if he can live till next turn, he can get another Severum off onto his Boxtopus.
Yeah, further going down that train of thought as well, if your opponent was smart enough to leave Jinx back and dodge the Hush when a likely lethal scenario is presented, it's usually a safe bet that they're going to be smart enough to not put her in danger unnecessarily going forward. So while saving a Hush for that kind of surprise block can be beneficial, your opponent's basically telling you what you need to know. I'm not going to do that, so there's no reason to save the Hush for something that's not going to happen.
Yep, hovering that Gifts from Beyond. Can only assume a Severum is the take from this.
Well, not necessarily. With your Felios alive, you could take something like a Crescendum if you know that there's one more Boxtopus left in your deck, because that turns into a Severum on your next trigger if that's really what your goal is.
Yeah, looking at doing a Calibrum, though.
Yeah, now that is interesting. That is not what I was.
All I can think about is lifesteal, 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 get out of this mess, try to heal up, but I love the Crescendum play into the lifesteal play. That definitely seems like the route to go.
Yeah, now they still have that opportunity. The Crescendum didn't get locked in there, so we will see how this goes. Gravitum this turn is rather interesting because that also means that you might be trying to push damage yourself on the following turn.
Perhaps. So we do see the Chompers come down, which tells us that there's probably not a discard option in hand right now. You know, if we saw like a Get Excited or something, for instance. There is the Aphelios level up, which won't do too much in this. It reduces the cost of the weapons by 1, which is something, but nothing that I think will really turn the tides of this game.
Now, what it does do, though, is it starts giving you multiple weapons per turn in a much more consistent manner, because you get the one at round start and the activation.
Yep.
And so knowing that you were trying to grab this Severum, you can start with that and then still also end up with maybe like another Gravitum to further cement stalling the next turn. So we'll see how this goes. Actually, it looks like they went with the Overwhelm option, which makes sense. If you're going to trigger another one and you're going to use this Boxtopus to maybe run over an Elusive, for example, you can start getting some damage on your opponent to chip in, but also the Overwhelm option, if this gets locked in here, represents a potential +2/+1 on whatever you're life stealing as well. So we'll see how this goes. He hasn't locked anything in yet. You have to assume that the Severum's going to happen before then. I think right now he's just thinking through and doing so visually. So don't panic, folks at home. BBG's a veteran.
Yep. When you're in a tournament, looking at all of your options are still a good idea. Even if you feel pretty confident that you want to take one over the other, it's good just to know that you have another choice. So this Jinx will be dying here. It'll be interesting to see if there is a burst level up that happens. It certainly could with this mana. It's hard to say what to expect. There aren't many ways to kill off your own Jinx, so this 8 lifesteal is going to go through, most likely. I mean, I'd be shocked. Most of these decks do not run Mystic Shot. They do run Get Excited, though, and I do not... double Get Excited is even possible here, so...
Now, this is a very interesting path to me, simply because BBG was trying to keep both the Boxtopuses alive with this trade. If you were really worried about that crowd favorite, you could have instead used your Pale Cascade on your 3/4 Boxtopus to make that go up to a 4/5 to threaten the Jinx, and then you could have used the life-stealing one to take out the crowd favorite.
Had a pretty big value on the lifesteal, though, which makes a lot of sense.
I was going to say, this says to me that he just really valued keeping one of these Boxtopuses alive for further suppressing the board. And I mean, that makes sense. You do also have the silence here for the crowd favorite, so it was not necessarily imperative that you get rid of it. This is a very effective 1 mana answer, and honestly, it's going to be the best value you get out of that card in this matchup. But
yep. So there being a little bit of heal here for the Aphelios and just cycling through these weapons a bit further, setting up the blockers. The crowd favorite is no longer a crowd favorite, as it is a 2/1 once it is silenced, and really, it was looking pretty dire for BBG for a bit, down to 4 health at one point, and it's looking like he's going to lock up this game pretty soon. The biggest issue would be another Jinx draw could certainly change things, but besides that, if a Jinx isn't found, this game is over.
Yeah, and this goes, in my opinion, back to what we had talked about before we even hopped into a game, right? At the start of the broadcast, I was talking about how Aphelios allows you to get away with a bunch of things you wouldn't normally otherwise, because he has so many tools and he's so effective at stalling. And this is an absolute clinic being put on by Aphelios. Down to 4 health, effectively using the weapons to expand your own board, get those Boxtopuses. You use Severum to gain the health. You've got Gravitum if you really need it. This is a single-handed carry by Aphelios. He is the AD carry of your Legends of Runeterra dreams.
Yes. Everything else is just a support. He is the hyper carry here. He is the one that stabilizes this game, gives the lifesteal, gives the stuns. I mean, he's doing all the work, and his teammates at least are being pretty light backpacks.
I mean, he's a slow queue hero. He's that guy who goes in and it's full Dunning-Kruger. All right, I did it all. I supported. I did the damage. Carried this team. But the reality is, he's doing that. This is the card game equivalent of absolutely dominating a match. And yeah, this is looking like it will be a near finished game soon, although nothing in the hands for either of our players. The Meteor is helpful for BBG, and I mean, with the power of Aphelios, it's not dying. Nothing's dying. Yeah, and the star shaping for extra. Yeah, I was just about to say, Hariel is just holding on hope that maybe you top deck something that gets rid of the Aphelios, and then you're kind of in a race each other mode. But this is going to lock it in. Aphelios' health is now high enough that that discard aggro deck just won't have an answer for him. And then the star shaping to further burst heal, create another high value late game bomb, really seals this one. So this is going to be a victory for BBG. There was maybe mild hope, and so I understand why Hariel doesn't just concede here. I mean, this is a tournament, big stakes, no reason to
20.
Give up, but
Yep, it is a tournament, so I can understand not conceding. Game is incredibly over. BBG at this point can make plenty of mistakes and it wouldn't matter.
There are some mistakes that you can't make in this scenario. For example, if you let your cat on your keyboard, you might accidentally surrender. I have this friend of mine. She's a wonderful content creator, and sometimes she has a cat that gets on her keyboard, really messes with things. The Silverfuse lady, you might have heard of her.
I've never had him concede, but I have had him push the power button before while jumping off my desk. That has happened.
Yeah.
Not while streaming, thankfully, but I've been like working on a video and he's jumped down and pushed the power button. And then finds the TF too. Okay, if this game wasn't over before, there's now a even more card advantage here than before with the Twisted Fate drawing, Pale Cascade. Alright, so this next attack is going to be lethal and will close out this game. BBG will be ahead by 1, as I'm quite sure this is the first game. And well done to him. We came in a spot where it looked really spooky for him, but with the power of Aphelios, he was able to stabilize, and we'll see what game 2 looks like.
Yeah, very well executed. That turning point, getting the Aphelios down. As we saw, there were considerations that BBG was making right when we came in, and there was that desire, that temptation to get the temple down, because you know, if you've got a temple and Aphelios going, it's such an engine. But right at that moment, made the proper decision to say, you know what, it matters far more to get the bodies down. The temple is great, but we'll have time to do that later when I'm not dead. Let's just not lose the game. So made a great call. Aphelios into Boxtopus, into Severum, and now we are moving on to another game. This time around, we see BBG on Fiora Shen, and this is a staple in the tournament lineups for many folks at the moment. So I'm not surprised to see this list either. But what I am now intrigued about is having seen Fiora Shen and Twisted Fate Aphelios being played by BBG. What was the ban? What did Hariel decide that they did not want to run into in this lineup?
Yeah, it looks like Hariel brought a very aggressive lineup too. This is a Sejuani Darius Overwhelm list, and we saw discard aggro. Maybe their third list is Fearsomes, perhaps. I'm not quite sure. Or maybe they have a TF Burblefish list as well. I'm very intrigued for what they banned from BBG. It was something that they probably has to be anti-aggro, although Fiora is pretty anti-aggro herself. So I have no idea what to expect what the ban was here. I'm quite curious on it.
Yeah, I don't know if it's like a turbo freezing, feel the rush, lots of health gain. Like maybe you just don't want to run into Avalanche. Maybe it was like Ezreal Teemo and they didn't want to deal with all the direct damage picking off their attackers. I would love to see what the rest of BBG's lineup is, because as you said, this list is also traditionally very good against aggro. If you can play Protect Fiora, a lot of times you can win with Fiora against aggro before aggro gets close enough to finishing you off. Now, of course, I say that, and we see this very fast start from Hariel, keeping up.
BBG again, debating on what he wanted to use there. Decides to go for the Sharp Sight. It does have the option of an additional Sharp Sight or a Riposte in the future as well. So we'll start leveling up this Fiora, or maybe we'll see, ooh, Troll Chant. It's going to say Noxian Fervor, and there's other options too. It looks like the Riposte is being hovered. Maybe we'll see a Sharp Sight. But getting a Troll Chant out this early has to feel pretty good for BBG, I would say. When it's not really getting them much either. You're saving a 3-2, perhaps, and the 3-2 gives you damage upon death. So it's not doing all that much here, just trying to delay Fiora.
Yeah, tries to delay Fiora. Also, in many ways, just trying to keep your threat alive, because this is a matchup where when you do find success against Fiora, traditionally it's because you either go wide so that the 1 or 2 units that you kind of play and protect with the Fiora lists just can't keep up with you, or you try to shut down Fiora by just not allowing her to get killed. So the Troll Chant was that path. Seeing that this is looking like overwhelm kind of aggro, it can be mid-range because it's got some very solid mid threats with Darius and Sejuani and so forth, but I have to assume this list also has access to perhaps a flash freeze or 2 or similar effects, because those are very common in these lineups as well. Those are great at suppressing Fiora, and that's possibly why they left this list unbanned, because they might have liked their matchup going into it.
Yeah, I've personally played the matchup of this, few sides on the overwhelm aggro side, and I personally did not like the matchup, but playing Fiora into, aggro into Fiora at all feels terrible. Of the ones, TF Aphilioso is much harder though than the Fiora, so I can see why they decided to leave that up. Having a decent number of combat tricks here as well. So the barrier will pop. If there's no Troll Chant here, we will see a level 2 Fiora coming in, as well as making a pretty solid trade here.
Yeah. I mean, all this talk about potential good things out of this matchup, the reality is that BBG hit the jackpot with this. They had the early Fiora with plenty of ways to keep her alive. I mean, we've seen 2 sharp sights and a backup Fiora serving as a riposte. And then they also had the Shen, right? If you can go Fiora into Shen in the first, say, 5 to 6 rounds, especially against aggro like this, you're gonna have a good time. Harriel needs a lot of help. This is looking dire. This is a hold your breath moment as far as like the attack goes, because there's one more combat trick in hand, and so if somehow Harriel has another answer, they can maybe shut down this Fiora, and that would open up a small window of opportunity.
Yeah, something as simple as a Death's Hand with this block could do it, but yeah, BBG trying to see if he can keep this Fiora alive, trying to use it as the win condition here, and decides that it doesn't want to take that much damage. You have to remember that Decisive Maneuver is also a card that is played here, so that is why he's strategically not blocking the 3-1. Really important to recognize that he's not blocking the Overwhelm, because Decisive Maneuver is an option here, and he's tapping below the Deny mana that that Harriel might think about playing around if BBG had kept it up.
Now, it's also worth noting BBG doesn't have something like a Spirit's Refuge here that might change the way you approach this, because you might be more willing to leave Fiora back if you wanted to guarantee getting the lifesteal out of her in a better situation later. But I think BBG knows that they're kind of hitting that threshold. It's just like last game, where you're going to be hitting the point where you just really need to not lose. And this is the right time to identify that. So there is the Decisive Maneuver that you had talked about.
And it doesn't feel great.
Yeah, it doesn't feel great. BBG avoided that masterfully, because you don't lose any of your units and you don't take that much additional damage by properly playing around it. So BBG looking very good now if they want to take this attack either as an open attack with the Stand United, or they could have played the Bright Steel if they want to protect Shen. But if they take the open attack here on the back of this Stand United, they might bait out even more combat tricks from Harriel, just to further deplete their resources.
Yeah, there actually is a potential for Fiora lethal here as well. This Relentless Pursuit could easily do that, which is pretty crazy to think about. With the double barrier, one from Shin, one from the Bright Steel. I mean, and the tap down to only 3 mana here, so Death's Hand has to be in the hand, which we would have seen that last turn. So really, it comes down to, did the opponent top deck Death's Hand, or is this game over? I mean, maybe Troll Chant, I guess, as well could help us. Like, has to be a combat trick. If there are 2 units in hand, this game is over. So
BBG's going to take his time, kind of think through this, but the Bright Steel into this attack, as opposed to taking the open attack and banking on Stand United, means they absolutely are planning to use this Relentless Pursuit.
They did find it.
They did find it.
That was a top deck that did it. So there is the Stand United to a little bit of a get out of jail free card here. So that will fix things up for BBG.
Yeah, you get to level your Shun, which still feels good. And you save the Fiora, but that also means you are not winning the game this turn anyway. And now, even more kind of dire is that you've got this 5/5 overwhelm on the other side of the board, along with a unit that represents at least 1 damage if it dies here. So you're at an effective health of 4. And you've run out of combat tricks.
Yeah. This is pretty insane. The difference of that Death's Hand, if that Death's Hand didn't exist, BBG had won the game. And he has no other options here either. Going down to 1 health, can't feel good. 1 combat trick is the Whirling Death and the game is over. Wow, it went from thinking BBG probably had that in the bag, but the Death's Hand is just a killer for him. You can see that he wasn't very happy about that outcome, as it was right on the toes. It could have been either way so easily. Both players played that game quite well, though. So we are now 1-1, and we'll see the 3rd game. It is important to recognize that in this tournament, if you lose 1 set of games, you are pretty much done. It is essentially a single elimination. Although we are in Swiss right now, you have to be 5-0 to get out into the top 32, into the top cut. So this game is critical for BBG if he really wants to have any hopes in this tournament. So we'll have to see what happens. It will be the discard aggro versus the Fiora Shin this time.
Now, because we got to see the screen there, I do want to say the other lineup that BBG has brought looked like it was Zoe Aphelios and it was Targan Demacia.
Wait, it can't be Aphelios twice though, can it?
Or not Aphelios, Aurelian Soul. Sorry, the other A-named champion from Targan.
Was it with Demacia or?
Yeah, with Demacia.
Okay, that's.
So I assume it's
BBG.
likely the very defensive, mostly mono Targan that splashes for Plaza. Maybe BBG's still big on that.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. So, important note here, BBG's hand is, I mean, he's stuck. He is not drawn well here. It is all combat tricks. That is why he didn't attack the 1/2 into the 2/1, because he wants to use the sharp sight to make sure he can keep his Green Glade Caretaker alive here.
Yeah, this is really important, because if there is any way to get rid of that Caretaker at all, and let's be honest, you're safe with that 1 mana there, but if there was any way to get rid of it, then BBG would have been in very dire straits.
Yeah. The Sprite Still Protector is quite helpful, though. Of course, it does say, hey, would you like to pass? And we'll pass here as well, saving up that mana for the combat trick. Wants to be able to play the Bright Still Protector defensively.
Yeah, an open attack will punish that a little bit here because you don't get the barrier down, and then you're kind of
get the
forced
riposte, though,
to eat some of it. I mean, you still have the standard riposte there, so you could block or attempt to block Draven or something else there if you really wanted to. And then if they have a combat trick, you have the single combat backup. So,
yeah,
you know, sitting on that spell mana when you have a handful of spells, it turns out, is really beneficial.
Yep. So really, either way, open attack or not, BBG has a pretty good answer overall.
Now, that Battlecaster, on the other hand, very good for Hariel, because right now you're trying to go wide and push as much damage as possible. The Urchin here is also helping by, again, going wide. And even with these blocks and these combat tricks, BBG is going to be taking some amount of damage here. The question now is this just going to take you down to 10? I feel like it has to, because you want to get rid of the Draven, but that also kind of takes single combat off the table to take advantage of your barrier.
Yep. This is a survival skills? Yep. A survival skills discarded, so an additional 1 damage push, and Draven will not be dying this turn.
Yeah, Draven doesn't die. You get extra damage. So you're effectively taking down their health by half. Still getting 1 trade. Now, you're running out of cards, but again, for Hariel, that doesn't matter. This is a discard deck, so in many ways that could be beneficial, even more so if there's a Jinx hanging out over there. On the side of BBG, you're really hoping to find something that alleviates this, something like a Spirit's Refuge, so you can gain some health. It's so amazing how how quick these games can go when you don't have an Aphelios to gain a bunch of health.
Or a Twisted Fate just to kill the whole line of units with a red card.
And so, BBG does find another unit. So that is looking great. Does want to... well, now you have a decision to make, because you wanted to pass and then try to save this barrier plus single combat for future turns, but with that wide of a board, I think now this has to come down, and you probably even consider using a single combat with this Nopify backup to take something out. And that Battlecaster looks like it might be
juicy.
A consideration. No, wants to target the Draven. Interesting.
I feel like the Battlecaster just offers so much damage here.
Yeah, I think BBG made the same assessment we did and went, you know, Draven's annoying, but that thing is a lot of incidental damage.
Yes, I mean, I feel like you die if you don't kill that. I think there's a really good chance that you die if you don't kill that.
I mean, depending on what the rest of Hariel's hand is, it's possible you still die here. This is a threatening board state.
Yeah, I'm pretty scared for BBG here myself. You can see that he's definitely a bit stressed out as well. Fortunately, we don't have a Hariel cam too to see what they have in hand and how confident they're feeling. Ooh, this deny is sick.
This deny is so important.
Yep, denies the 3 damage, denies the draw, means that there's probably no Jinx in hand if they were willing to discard it. So that's important to note, that Jinx is off the table at the time, and really the rest of this turn could be too, unless it's a discard. I mean, there could be a Jury Rig in hand, there could be a Vision in hand.
A Vision is the nightmare scenario here.
Yeah, I don't know, I feel like it could be a Vision, but we'll have to see.
We don't have caster vision right now to see if that's a Vision, but that is looking pretty dangerous if it is.
Indeed so.
So we're going to wait with bated breath to see where these blocks go.
Wow.
And losing 2 of your 3 units and having to use a combat trick. If they lock this in, and they do, all right. So this is looking like it's going to take BBG down to 5. But again, a Vision here, because it would be burst speed off the axe. If that other card that we can't see as a Vision, then that is essentially game.
It is not.
All right, it is not. But it does represent trading so that the entire board now is gone on the side of BBG. Now that River Shaper is looming and is actually very important, because if the River Shaper can find you something like a Spirit's Refuge to start gaining health, you might get back in this game. But the problem is it needs to strike to do that, and you don't have any way to keep this River Shaper alive.
Wow. This is brutal.
Yeah. So the reason that you pass here, if you're wondering at home, if Hariel decides to play more units here and one of them is like a 1-1, you could use single combat before they lock in their attackers, unless it's like a Jury Rig into an open attack. You could use your single combat on your River Shaper to kill a 1-1, survive, and then maybe you find you that Spirit's Refuge.
This is such a scary moment for BBG. Does see the... thinking about going down to 1 here. So that will force the blade to come out, discard something, and then he'll respawn with a single combat afterwards. Assuming there's no Get Excited, but there's Nopify in the hand, so it doesn't matter too much. Discard isn't a discard, your typical discard target, so good of BBG to wait on that. Still pretty dire scenario. Concerted Strike not going to do all that much. Really needs to find another answer here. Some lifesteal, a Screeching Dragon, just something to be able to do anything here.
Yeah, wow, I'm actually shocked there was a block there. At 20 health, you just let that through.
You always let it through. Yeah, the block
This is a gift to BBG. They might have caught Hariel sleeping. I was
sure.
just about to make
And
the joke. I was going to say, I don't know what the question is, but sharp sight is not the answer, and I am wrong.
On top of that, they blocked with the 2-2 and not the 2-1. I'm quite confused. But we do see there's another River Shaper, and we do have the Concerted Strike, so we could draw 2 from this River Shaper instead of 1. So we will see the Nopify come out here.
The Nopify is going to keep him alive for a moment.
Really needs to find that Spirit's Refuge that you've been mentioning.
That I can't imagine that block happened. Like, I'm still reeling from it.
Yeah, and no attack here either.
Yeah, I don't think that this is a Concerted Strike worthy turn unless you just really want to draw a card to find that refuge. But I think you take this as a gift. When the aggro player just decides to not attack, it's a gift. Wow, what a top deck!
Yeah, that's a lot of damage coming in here for BBG. 18. And draw a card.
No, it's going to be even more. You're going to eat at least one blocker because when you attack, Bright Steel reapplies barriers. So that goes up to a 13-2 as we can see. But you're also going to get at least one River Shaper trigger, maybe more. Like, that was such a massive top deck here. Now, Hariel still has outs because we haven't found that Spirit's Refuge yet. And even if you did find it here, you wouldn't have the mana to play that plus Concerted. So if they had another Get Excited, for example, there would have been an open opportunity there.
Get Excited is... Oh no, there it is! Oh!
All these top decks for BBG, and instead Hariel finds the second Get Excited. And with no Spirit's Refuge, if they had found a Spirit's Refuge anywhere here, you could play that with the Concerted and gain a bunch of burst healing, like an Absurd. But without it, BBG falls, and you can see the disappointment in his face.
Yeah, the first game too, knowing that, I mean, it, unfortunately for BBG, his tournament's over. I can't watch too much longer, I feel so bad.